Can prayer alter God's will? Or is God's will fixed and unchangeable? Now, what is prayer first? Prayer means communication with God, communicating, talking, expressing yourself with God or to God. And for you to be able to say communication, you have to understand that prayer is from a relational standpoint. Although people pray for many reasons, but as a believer, you need to have this core understanding that prayer is as a relational. That's why Jesus taught us that when we want to pray, you say, Our Father, a relationship, a relationship. Why am I emphasizing on this? Is because as believers, I don't know, maybe it's because as a result of somehow, somewhere, the church have consistently sold Christianity to be like when you come to God or when you come to Christianity and you obey God, you do His commandments. They sold Christianity like a transactional, like if you do for God, God will do for you. In as much as that in itself is not wrong, but using that as only a representation depicting Christianity is wrong. Because Christianity is all about relationship with God, not transaction. Another mistake that Christians make when they pray, we attach special meanings to prayer. You see somebody will be praying, you say, God, if you are God, do this thing for me. God, if true you are God, if true you are the God of heaven and earth, if true you call this pastor that I'm going to his church, you will do this thing for me. And when God doesn't do it, it will look as if you start conflicting within yourself, because obviously the opposite will become your what? Your reality. That is, God is not God or God is not real. So you don't need to attach special meaning to prayer. It's not biblical. The only meaning to prayer is communication. You are communicating to God, you are talking to God. Any other extra meaning you are adding is your human self. Is you just doing yourself. And do you know why I say you are doing yourself? Because at the end of the day, when the will of God did not permit it into happening in your reality, you'll be conflicted within yourself. And the easiest thing for you to do is to start condemning God, blaming God, insulting God, or you leave Christianity. And that is how it started. Most of them, this is how they started their journey. They've prayed so many prayers, attaching special meanings to it. God, they say you are this. God, they say you are kind. God, they say you are loving. God, you are this, you are that. If you are truly this, answer this prayer. And the will of God did not permit it into reality. Or sometimes not the will of God. Maybe the reality they are at that time did not allow it into happening. Then they blame God. I don't know if you understand. So you need to stop attaching special meanings to your prayer. When you pray, treat it as a relationship with God. You talking to your father, to your mother, to your uncle, whatsoever name or emotional name you refer to God as. See it as you doing that to God. It is not a transaction. It is not you do for me, I do for you. Because what happens if you keep it a transaction? Then now about the days when the will of God do not do to your own bidding. What will it be like? So serving God is not transaction. I'm sorry if Christianity somehow or some maybe the person who preached to you, the pastor you listen to sold Christianity to you that way. I am sorry. I'm apologizing on their behalf. But that alone does not represent Christianity. Transactional relationship is not Christianity. Christianity is relationship with God, connection with the heart of the Father, relationship with our Creator, and not what transaction. Now you also need to understand that when we talk about God's nature is the core of who He is. The character is the expression. Because, for example, God is love, that is His nature. Because God is love, the expression of Him being lovable or being loving. The character that we see, the character traits that reflects His nature of being love, is Him being kind, being caring, etc. God is omnipotent. And when we say God is omnipotent, we say God is all powerful. When we say God is all powerful, we are reaffirming that everything that goes in line with God's nature, God has the capacity, the power to do it. God does not do anything against His nature. Everything that aligns with His nature as being God, He has the power to do it. God is omniscient, meaning He's all-knowing, both past, present, and future. Not by guesses. He knows everything. Everything lies bare before Him. God is what? Omnipresence, meaning He's everywhere. It's not just like we humans that we cannot be there without living here. God is everywhere. Then when these are God's nature and His character are unchangeable, your prayer cannot change it. Then we have God's sovereign will or purpose. For example, the second coming of Christ, judgment, His will over a nation, over a territory as pertaining the kingdom. These things do not change. No matter the prayer you pray, you cannot alter them. So these are God's sovereign and ultimate purposes, sovereign will. No prayer can change it. But now when it comes to the activities of human being, God in Him being sovereign made prayer as a tool for us to participate, for us to contribute in influencing the outcomes of our reality. Underline the word influence. You cannot dictate, because everything is still subjected to God. It's just like, for example, now, how am I going to explain? For example, let me use, I don't know if analogy is a perfect explanation, but just so you get a hint of what I'm saying, it's just like you're working for a boss and you desire to go for, maybe you are going on a vacation, you want to travel, and you write your application letter expressing yourself to your boss that I will not be available in work for so and so day, I'll be traveling. Now you have expressed yourself, is it not? You have talked. That's the case of you praying, you have talked to God. It is not left for your boss to either say yes or no. Depending on maybe when he read through your request, he considers everything. It's not like that is how it is. That's the reason why it is wrong for you to place extra meaning to prayer. Because when you place extra meaning to prayer, when the will of God is not allowing it to happen, you will be conflicted within yourself, and it will make you have no other option but to go with the opposite. I don't know if you get. So when it comes to the activities of human, God in Him being sovereign made prayer as a tool for us to participate in influencing our outcomes. But when it comes to God's nature and character, His sovereign, His ultimate purpose over what as pertaining kingdom, no prayer can alter it. It is unchangeable, it is fixed. But when it comes to human activities, God in him being sovereign, being a father, being a mother, being every kind thing that you can refer to him as, made prayer as a tool for us to be able to participate in the process of influencing our outcome. It doesn't mean that God, I need you to say that God is not unstable. It is we humans that are unstable. So your prayer doesn't make God change his mind or doesn't make God know. You already made prayer as a way for us to influence our outcomes. That is it. But then as a matured believer, you have to rest your anchor on the will of God. In Luke 22, verse 42, we see Jesus praying. And after him praying, he said, Father, take this cup away. But what did he end his prayer? And he said, not my will, let your will be done. First John chapter 5, verse 14, reaffirm this, that our confidence is in not just us making a request, but at our request is according to the will of God. That if we ask anything according to his will, that is, as a believer, your confidence should not alone be that you've prayed or be that you've expressed yourself in making your request. Your confidence should be that at the end of me praying, it is the will of God that should be what's done. So when you have this understanding, you will at least have some level of peace. I know that sometimes, depending on the requests you want from God, you might, in your own understanding, God, you have to do it, you have to do it. So it just have a way of stealing your peace. But if you have this understanding that as a matured believer, my confidence is in the will of God over my desires. The will of God, it is not wrong that you express your desire. When you are praying, you express your desires to God, Father, this is what I want. But at the end of the day, let your will be done, not my will, because we have the understanding that the thought he has for us is of peace and not of evil, to give us an expected end. We have the understanding that he's a good God, he's a kind God. We have the understanding that he watches over us. We have the understanding that he will never forsake his own. We have the understanding that he has the capacity to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we think or even imagine. So at the end of the day, when you made your request, rest it on the will of God. Let your confidence be that let the will of God prevail over my desires, even if the will of God is the opposite of what I desire. That should be your confidence. So as a believer, you should not be able to, I know that it's not easy as a human being, but you should not struggle so much that something is not going your way when you have prayed and lay everything bare before your Father. Your understanding should be let the will of God be done, even when the will of God is contrary to my own expectations or what desires. So what am I trying to say in a nutshell? That can prayer alter the will of God? Depending on the will of God you are referring to. If we are referring to the will of God as in God's sovereign will, ultimate will over a territory, over a nation, as per kingdom, God's nature or God's character, God's purpose concerning a kingdom, like the second coming of Christ, like judgment, it is fixed, it is unchangeable. No amount of prayer can alter it. That is the ultimate will of God. But when you're referring to the will of God as per relational will of God, which means God's will in our relationship with Him, in our interaction with Him, it is not fixed. God in him being sovereign provided prayer as a tool for us to be able to contribute, participate in influencing our what outcomes, our reality. That does not mean that God is unstable. That does not mean that God doesn't know what he wants to do. No, but it will be so unkind of him and bossy of him to just leave everything to himself. So in him being sovereign, he made us participate in the process. You feel participated in your life by praying about something, but then rest it on the anchor that let his will prevail over my what desires, let his will prevail over my expectations. Also, I know that sometimes when people ask these questions, they ask it from a place of they've prayed so many prayers and God did not answer. But as a believer or a matured believer, you have to understand that your prayer, like the example I gave, you writing your prayer to your boss, is subjected to the will of God. Rest, let your anchor be so that when a prayer, that any request you make doesn't come to fruition, you will not be so worried. This topic it has so many nuances, because sometimes the prayers that we pray to God and do not get answered, sometimes it's not on God anymore. Maybe as a human being, the effort, the responsibility you are supposed to be doing, because some believers have this mindset that they leave everything for God to do. That's irresponsible on your part. If you are praying to God for something, you also have to be doing the earthly responsibility for that too, and leave God to do his own supernatural or heavenly activities for it. You have to do your earthly activities for it. Do you understand? So this topic or this question is nuanced in the sense that it has so many reasons. People will be asking this question from a perspective that they've prayed so many times and prayers and the answer is opposite to theirs. Some will be asking it as a result of knowing if prayer is truly important. So people will say, when I stop praying, my life gets better. When people say that word, I understand that. I truly understand what they mean. This, I feel like they mean it from this point of, when you are praying to God, in your human nature, you are hopeful. And sometimes even the Bible says hope maketh the heart sick. While you are hoping and anticipating something and it's not forthcoming, it has a way of destabilizing you, making you have so much heartbreak and all of that. So I get it when people say, when I stop praying, my life get better, I have peace. I think that's speaking from that angle. But as a mature believer, you should understand that when you pray, pray with the confidence that God have heard you. And above it, his will be done. So you should have a rested heart. Even if you want to worry, you shouldn't worry at the expense of your peace. See, this topic is really nuanced. If you have any question from what I've explained, you can feel free to drop it in the comment section. But as pertaining the topic that I discussed, if the will of God is fixed, can prayer alter it? You have to understand that when we are talking about it, depends on the will of God you're referring to. If you're referring to the sovereign will of God, if you're referring to God's nature and character, it is unchangeable. But when it comes to human activities, human relationship with God, God in him being sovereign allowed prayer as a tool for us to influence, not really alter. We can influence our outcomes, our reality. Even at that, everything still rests on the anchor of God's will over everything. Bye, guys.